Welcome to the Trump Report, our election night special, our big Trump versus Biden special. We never did get around to changing the name of the show, but here we are. And like clockwork, in the chat, our friend Storage Yard Resident, always there. Storage Yard Resident gets all of his election coverage from us, but we appreciate that level of loyalty. I'm Christian Blatt. Joining me are Tamara Brown.
Hey there.
And Scott Moore, the S-Man.
Hey, guys.
And we may have some other friends coming in. We may not. We may do more show tonight. We may not. We may do some later in the week. We'll feel it all out as we go along. So let's do just a general, in this day and age, if you go into anywhere, you probably have to have your temperature taken. So let's do a little temperature check. Tamara, how are you feeling right now?
Not as good as I was feeling earlier today. I was feeling very optimistic today. Sending out, the power of positive thinking, the laws of attraction, and I thought we'd be doing a little better right now. It's feeling a little too much like 2016 for my taste. And I think the thing that I'm most surprised about is the difference between, because I was sort of flipping between NPR, CNN, and Fox News, and the vast difference in how they were reporting, not opinion-wise. I even felt Fox News was being very neutral until they brought on a couple, correspondent from the Federalist Society and things like that. But at least just as far as percentage wise and stuff like that, I was surprised at when I turned on NPR at 5:30, they were like, oh, it's really looking like Biden's going to win Florida. And then I think not even a half hour later, CNN, anyway, it's, and then at one point Fox News actually called Virginia for Biden, which I guess they had to have
which by the way, they still have. They have not. Just to interject, Fox News has actually not changed that as of yet. I think that they're convinced. I think that the number from Fairfax County. This is the Fox News map. I think this is current. They've got 129 Biden, 109 Trump, which both of those numbers are much higher than CNN has. But you'll see what that they have right here. They have Virginia. Even though when you actually click on it, you see Trump up 52% to 46%. But I do think that a lot of that has to do with the percentage in Fairfax County. Well, that's Maryland, right. So that's not going to help, is it? But I don't know my counties as well as I thought I did in Virginia. But
go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. Because it's so small. So, yeah, I mean, now 99% of Fairfax County is in. So Fox might very well need to take that projection back. So anyway, Oh, by the way, very important update from the Decision Desk. Storage Yard Resident has followed you on TikTok, Tamara. So.
Oh, awesome. Wow. Thank you. So I'm surprised that that the networks are not as in sync as much as I would have expected.
Yeah, I do think everybody, there have been mistakes in years past, but for the most part, they, by the way, Scott, CNN right now is calling New Hampshire for Biden. I don't know if you have that already. Okay.
I have that already. Yes.
Okay. I'd seen other sources report that. And Tamara, I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish your thought.
That's about all I was going to say is the differences in reporting. But then outside of that, I'm losing my optimism now. It's just feeling a little too much like 2016.
Yeah, I can understand that. And Scott, let me know when you want to share your screen, but also give us just some overall thoughts for you.
Overall, it is a lot closer than I expected it to be. But then at the same time, it's still looking pretty good for Biden. I think the Senate is going to be a little bit tighter as well. I think at the beginning of the day, we thought, could we be looking at a landslide? for Joe Biden. And as everyone had been saying for a long period of time, there was a very fine line between landslide territory and barely eking it out. And now it looks more like we're barely eking out. But, I thought with Trump's overall unpopularity that he was really going to have, he was going to drag everybody else down. But we've talked about this before. And in fact, we talked about it last week on this podcast, the fact that about, those voters returning home and just, we saw a lot of polls that were trending kind of outrageously in one direction or over another. But as we've talked about, I've said, look, at the end of the day, a lot of these voters will come home and a lot of these people will come out in the demographics and the dynamics are not going to shift that dramatically. We just don't see landslide wins anymore like we did, 30 years ago, back in the 80s and before. We just don't have those type of wins anymore. So you're seeing that a lot of these things have come home again. And it's still, to me, looking more 2018, though, than 2016. So I'm still feeling optimistic for Democrats tonight because we're seeing those things happening still, where it's going to be incredibly tight in places like Texas and Georgia, maybe North Carolina, although it's looking still pretty positive for Democrats, actually, in North Carolina, the last time I looked. But that they're just not going to quite cross the finish line. And then in Florida, I think you just saw a very unique situation where the Trump campaign was very successful. And I was reading a lot of articles from Orlando Sentinel and Miami Herald leading up to the election of painting Democrats as socialists.
Yep.
So you have a very unique demographic in Miami-Dade County with a high Venezuelan population and obviously a very high Cuban American population. And by continually calling Democrats socialists, that was enough to get a lot of those Cuban Americans and Venezuelan voters to make sure they came out and voted for yes, they voted for Trump. And you could see those numbers hugely cut in half for Biden in Miami-Dade County. I think Hillary Clinton won it by almost 30 points, and Biden's only ahead by single digits there. So that's what really brought down the whole state of Florida right now for the Biden campaign, because when you look at some of the other numbers, he just wasn't able to pick up enough. And I think, there were, as Tamara was saying, there were a lot of areas that were similar to 2016 as far as vote margins. We saw a few upticks here and there for Biden across Central Florida, but you really wanted to see higher numbers. In fact, in Pinellas County, where St. Petersburg is, and Hillsborough, where Tampa is, and you go up I-4, and Orange County and Seminole County, you wanted to see a lot of those numbers. You wanted to see Biden really run up the score in those areas, but he really didn't. The bright spot for him was Duval County, where he actually looks like he's going to eke out a win, which is the first time a Democrat has won there in years. But to make Tamara feel a little better, the last time Florida did not vote for the winning presidential ticket was in 1992, when the last time an incumbent also lost office, and that was George H.W. Bush, who carried the state of Florida, but also went on to lose the election. So really, Florida is a weird place. We saw it in 2018. It kind of bucked the trend of the Democratic pickups everywhere, and the Senate flipped to Republican, and the gubernatorial race went Republican by a slim margin. But we're seeing these other states still come through. Arizona's looking really positive for Democrats right now. North Carolina's still potentially a slim pickup, but Tom Tillis is actually ahead further than Trump is. So I don't know. The Senate is a lot tighter than I thought it was going to be, but it looks promising. Ohio's tighter than we thought it was going to be, trending towards the Democrats. So I still see optimistic that the Democrats can pick it up, but it's going to be a lot tighter, and it could go a lot later tonight than we might have first thought.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that a lot of years, people who follow this, this was a year where people were like, oh, maybe we can just not look at Florida for once, not have it be what it usually was. But I haven't heard a lot from Dr. Larry Sabato much on Twitter tonight, but he did share this from someone who pointed out that date is a bloodbath. Florida will go for Trump. And he said that he believes he's correct. A lot of people are starting to, people are sticking with predictions for Biden to win it all, but I don't think people are seeing, the kind of expectations in Florida, and some very hot numbers that I've been texted is that the British bookies are now taking action on Biden plus 265%. So what that means is if I'm not mistaken, you bet $100 you're going to win 365. So then those odds are a far cry from what we were seeing yesterday. And you saw Nate Silver had, I think, Trump at under 10%. And then if he wins Florida, it's 33%. And if he wins Ohio, it's practically a toss up, I think. So just those two states. And there are some interesting returns that we're seeing for sure. Scott, do you want to share what you've got there? Okay, so let's bring that into the mix. And I'm seeing this for the first time. So you have 95-92, which right now CNN has Biden 98, Trump 95. So you're not too far off from where they're at.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what they have that's different than yours. But
I am not sure. Oh, you know what? I probably, because I have Alaska and Hawaii on here too, which I can take those off for now, but we kind of know which way they're going to go anyways.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can close. Yeah, I know. It's like it's like you can click on California if you want to too, but
Yeah,
exactly.
So I think again the biggest like we've talked about, a lot of the results have kind of trended back the way we expected them to. I mean, it looks like going into Texas right now too that Trump is leading, and even though Biden has made inroads in places like Dallas, Houston a bit, Austin and San Antonio, in Bexar County, in Tarrant County, some of those areas where he has done better than Hillary Clinton, he really hasn't improved much from the 2018 Senate race with Beto O'Rourke. And even after all the talk of Harris County with that huge early voting numbers, which we were feeling very positive might trend Democratic, again, the numbers are not that much different from 2016 and 2018. And again, Biden really had to run up the numbers in places like Texas to really get that. And it's the same thing in Georgia. Trump has been holding his lead in a lot of those very rural counties and really hasn't lost that. And Biden's really going to have to even up the numbers from even Stacey Abrams in 2018. Hillary Clinton won the Atlanta metro region by about 30 points. And then Stacey Abrams came in and won by 36 points. So you really have to see numbers closer to 40 points of leading in the Atlanta metro area for Biden to hopefully eke out a win in Georgia. And right now it's not quite looking like that. So again, it's going to come down to being very, very close in Georgia, very, very close in places like North Carolina, probably even closer in Texas. It may end up being closer in Texas than in Florida, which is pretty incredible when it's all said and done. Because it looks like by Florida standards, Donald Trump is almost 400,000 votes ahead. And that was really kind of running up Miami-Dade. So just Senate-wise and presidential election-wise, it's going to be a lot tighter than I think a lot of us may have expected this morning. Is just the bottom line. Arizona is trending and for Biden right now, so that could be a pretty solid.
Yeah, and our friend Andreas Froby points out that you have Colorado as red, and I've seen everyone.
Oh yes, it's blue. Yes, that's correct.
That was actually where I was going to go next, was to Arizona. And we can bring your map back in a little bit, because you're seeing some very positive things for Democrats in Arizona, and this is within the last. Actually, this is from a little while ago. So CBS has Arizona now leaning Biden. It was a toss-up before, and it had been a toss-up. So that's something it's encouraging for him, and that's a perfect example of one of those states where the handful of metro areas basically negate the way the rest of the state votes. You were seeing some of that in Ohio earlier, but now it seems like for the most part, Ohio seems to be in President Trump's column. I don't know that anyone's called it for him.
No. It's still pretty close. It's still pretty close. And again, the outstanding votes are going to be in some of those urban areas like Cincinnati. A lot of the votes are still remaining in Cleveland and Youngstown and parts of Columbus. So it's going to be very close. And again, even if Biden doesn't pull off the win here and he wins in the other blue wall states and wins in Arizona and maybe sneaks out a win in North Carolina, he's still going to win. And it kind of sets the table for Democrats for some of these states for 2022 and then the next presidential election of 2024. that these states have really gotten tighter. And you can see places like Arizona, for instance, that could now become a reliably blue state, much like New Mexico did last decade, and much like Colorado and Nevada have become pretty solidly blue over the past decade. Arizona may be continuing to trend that way. And then you get some of those other Sunbelt states like Texas and Georgia and North Carolina, and even Florida with the right situations where you have 3 points or less. And that's going to set the table for Democrats to be able to pick up these states in the next elections. Like we've talked about, these states are going to continue to trend more Democratic as we move through this new decade. So even if he falls short and Biden still has other ways to eke out a victory, it really does set the table for Democrats moving forward.
Yeah. So the interesting thing that the reason why I'm sharing this map at the moment is because the way that Fox is color coding this, the pinks mean that something's leaning in a color direction. So you have these very light blues for Arizona and New Mexico. Other outlets have called New Mexico outright,
Right.
but they have Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin. They have them all pink, as in leaning towards Trump. And I don't think it's too much of a gamble I'm not going too far out on a ledge to say that if those pink states were to all turn red, there's not enough math for Joe Biden. He needs to win those states. He can get away with not winning Florida. He can get away with not winning Ohio. But if all those states go towards President Trump, and this is something we talked about weeks ago, that who it seems is the apparent winner tonight may very well not be the person to win in any of those states. And that goes either way, whether it looks like it's Biden, whether it looks like it's Trump. Obviously, there are votes still coming in, and this is why President Trump said that he's basically going to send his lawyers to Pennsylvania immediately at midnight tonight. So there's some of that. So
well, I would say the biggest caveat though to those upper Midwest states are, remember, places like Florida were able to start counting those mail-in ballots before Election Day. Places like Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania have to wait till today. And the other thing I would say when it comes to Pennsylvania too is that it's broken down by counties, and counties got to decide when they wanted to start counting those mail-in ballots. And there's a few counties in Pennsylvania that are not even starting until Friday, November 6th. So there is a lot of I would say some shadiness going on to try to help Donald Trump, because those counties were Republican leaning. The other caveat I'll say too about Virginia is most states have started their mail-in ballot batches first. Virginia actually swapped that. So they're seeing their same day voting being calculated right now. And that's why a lot of people are freaking out. They're like, why is Virginia so heavily skewed towards Trump? That's because of that. And of course, you have those main population centers like Fairfax County and in Northern Virginia that are hugely heavily Democratic that don't have those numbers in. And again, the caveat in places like Wisconsin and Dane County and Milwaukee, a lot of those heavy population zones have not gotten a lot of their numbers in yet either. So you have to take a lot of those numbers with a grain of salt. So as far as I think it's interesting for Fox News to do that, but it also can be very deceptive. And that's both ways. If you had something leaning blue, earlier in the evening, and vice versa. So it's a little bit deceptive because of the way some states count their mail-in ballots versus other states, and how that's going to be arranged. And it's different depending on the state. So you're going to see a lot of wild number changes between now and probably tomorrow morning when we get up.
And that's not why I'm feeling too confident about Arizona as much as it seems, is because it seems like Biden will have an early lead, but then that's because of the early voting, right?
Well, yes and no. I will take it by looking at, when you consider the percentage of votes that are already counted, and you look at places like Maricopa County. Maricopa County is still heavily skewed towards the Democrats right now, by over double digits. So that's where 60% of the state population lives. And that's like ground zero for Arizona. It has been trending Democratic the last couple of years. And we talked about this on this podcast, that Maricopa County had slightly gone for Trump in 2016 after being heavily, Republican. And Maricopa County is definitely trending Democratic. The other thing too is Pima County, down where Tucson is. always has been the Democratic bastion for Arizona. But the numbers are like 30 points higher right now, with Biden leading. So there is quite a bit of cushion for Biden right now. And you're seeing similar numbers, too, with Mark Kelly. You're seeing about a double digit, between 7 points and 10 points ahead. So even though we're not fully counted yet and those numbers are going to shrink, it does look a lot more positive for Arizona for Biden right now than I think any other place besides the upper Midwest could trend to him. But Arizona looks like the most solid Democratic pickup right now, in my opinion, as I'm looking at the map. So, no, I still feel pretty confident about it.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the what the difference is, because obviously I'm trying to at least look in the camera for the most part. But CNN does have Biden 118 to Trump's 105. So there's been some movement, and we have
538 has Trump 114 and Biden 113.
Okay. Polls are going to close in about 3 minutes, so we might see.
We'll get some more numbers in. Yeah,
more numbers. And I think California closes at 8, or is it close at 9?
Correct. Closes at 8.
Okay.
Yep.
So I mean, that's 55 that they've just been waiting to give to Biden all night. I mean, I know that you had people in the streets in Newport Beach that were excited for when President Trump, did his fundraiser with the Beach Boys, or the fake Beach Boys, in that, it's Mike Love and a bunch of guys that he gives a salary. It's like, you don't even have Stamos in the band. So you're not even close to the Beach Boys. But anyway, so, I think that's a narrative that's not going to happen, which is the Trump takes California. There was a lot of interest in the early returns in Texas, because Texas had counted the early vote, right? And the early vote favored Biden. And then, some of the counties were certainly interesting and certainly trended, but I think Texas and Georgia are more likely to be states that you're seeing trend in a direction. Let's talk a little bit about some of the Senate returns that we've seen. We've got about 2 minutes until polls close. So, what the big one, I guess, was Hickenlooper in Colorado, because they flipped that seat.
Right.
I did see that your friend Mitch McConnell will still be around for you to tweet to. I honestly don't think anybody's surprised in that, except, anybody who's paying attention. Obviously you look at Mitch McConnell, and I just mean you physically look at him and you're like, how? But I think everybody expected that to go that way. Lindsey Graham.
Absolutely. I think Lindsey Graham was the biggest kind of one that people were hoping on that second tier.
Yeah,
and again, on a landslide night, that he'd be able to be swept out, especially. But again, like we've talked about, fundraising really doesn't mean anything. You can go back to a lot of people that self-fund their races, and it doesn't always end well for them. Like Meg Whitman out here a decade ago ran against
Mike Bloomberg.
And I was going to say Mike Bloomberg in the presidential level, and then you see something like Lindsey Graham. And I think what happened again, where a lot of people came home for Lindsey Graham after Amy Coney Barrett was voted in for the Supreme Court. So I think, those last couple of weeks really helped him. I do think that there was a risk for him a couple of weeks ago, but those numbers were able to tick back. And again, like we talked about, people returned home again. And again, South Carolina is a very Republican state. And once we knew Trump was going to win, we we're pretty certain that Lindsey Graham is going to win. But, the numbers were a lot higher than I expected too. I think right now he's over 200,000 votes ahead of Jamie Harrison. So it's not even close. And now we're starting to see the 8 o'clock numbers come in. So like the West Coast is coming in, Oregon, Washington, and, California. We're not even waiting to call, anything.
So CNN is projecting California, obviously, and Washington and Oregon. So that's 55 for Biden. That was a given.
Well, Blitzer's pretty hilarious when it comes to those kinds of states, because like he makes this big earlier in the night. He's like, projection coming in for Biden, New York.
Yeah. So it's 55, 12, 7. So is that 74? Did I do that in my head quickly? I think that's 74 more electoral votes. So and then Idaho is too early to call. But Wyoming for President Trump, So now it's
Yep.
Biden 192, Trump 108. That's look, that's still a long way to go. I mean, that's that's what is it?
78 more. 78 more.
78 more votes. Yeah, exactly. So, but I mean, look, those are things you counted on, but you need those, I mean, you need those 3 states. If you're Biden, I mean, I think that, that was very much that basically every projection for Biden had all 3 of those West Coast states. And anyone who's ever been to any of those states, realistically didn't expect them to go any other way. I think just California, because of Los Angeles and San Francisco alone, it really doesn't matter about any of those other counties. I understand Orange County. I know what it is. I sort of fake lived there for a while this summer, so I get it, but it's not anywhere as many people. And I think a lot of states, have, these huge metropolitan centers. And that's really the interest in Pennsylvania, and why President Trump definitely wants, if he's ahead in, I guess, an hour is midnight Eastern, he doesn't want them to count any more votes there. And the state has been fairly defiant about that. But I think that what was apparent early, Tamara, was you definitely had some people predicting blowouts for Biden, like huge. We've both blue wave and red wave have been trending. I don't think I see either of those in these returns. But I don't think that if Biden is able to win, I don't think that that's a blue wave. I don't see at this point. I think before they started counting votes, or at least announcing what they had, I could have seen the huge turnout having impacted Biden favorably. But I think that now, I always thought that if Trump was going to win, it was going to be a bit of a squeaker. And I also thought that there was a chance that if Trump was going to win, we'd know probably right around now, because he would have run up some of the, because he's not going to win any of the states that are late, obviously Alaska, but he wasn't going to win those 3 that they just called for Biden.
What time was it in 2016 that we pretty much knew it was going to be Trump?
We didn't know. So, Scott, we finished around 11, give or take, 11 p.m. Pacific time, which is 2 a.m. Eastern
time. Yeah.
It seemed very likely that Trump was going to win, but it was not a foregone conclusion. It seemed very likely at that point. I would say at this point, then I think we must have started around 10 o'clock. Because I remember 8 o'clock. I remember trading texts with some people, including AfterBuzz founder Kevin Undergaro. He actually called me. We talked a little bit about it, and that was the point where I still looked at Pennsylvania. I'm like, I just wasn't convinced that Pennsylvania was going to go for Trump at like 8 4 years ago. But so yeah, I think that it was a little bit more apparent at that point. I think that there's a lot of warning signs for Biden. Florida, North Carolina, Virginia is, I think, Fox being so quick to put that up as a blue. So have you, as we've been talking, let's see. So you're at 165 for Biden. So somehow CNN has almost 30 more votes for him.
Yeah, I must be missing. I don't know which ones I'm missing right now.
Let's see. Colorado. Your Colorado keeps switching. No, your Colorado's blue. Never mind.
Did you do Illinois?
Illinois? You're Illinois, yeah.
They called Illinois. Okay.
Yeah, they called Illinois. So yeah, that's getting you pretty close. There's probably one other one. And you did New Hampshire. Let's see. I know it's like I'm trying to look at it. This is
have they called
Connecticut? Did you do Connecticut? Yeah, they called Connecticut. Yeah.
Okay.
And Some
Island?
have called Rhode Island, but I don't know if CNN has. So you're at 196. Now there's some more for Trump though, for sure. But I don't know. No one's
I don't
called
know where
Iowa.
those would be it. No, nobody's
No,
called.
yeah, Idaho's still too close to call. You know what? So
Montana.
116. So you actually, yeah, you have Trump at 116. CNN has Trump at 108. So yeah, you've actually given him more credit than
Well, 538 has Trump at 114.
Okay, so they obviously have a little bit, but if you want to, just look, we're looking at these maps so that you guys don't have to flip around, basically.
Mhm.
But I wanted to show what the latest is. I think it's always useful to look at what Fox is doing as well. So they have Biden 207, Trump 148. So there's definitely some differences here. They seem to have really filled in. They have 98% of the vote in Florida. And Biden is
They filled in Florida.
He's almost 300,000 behind.
Yeah.
According to Fox. So yes. I think I can see them being comfortable calling that. I
think they're still waiting because I think they're nervous, but I think they could call Florida for.
Yeah, I haven't heard anybody call it.
Nobody has yet. No.
But I mean, this number here. So this 207 for Biden. That's where you're just like, okay, sure. He needs to get one or, there's a lot of electoral votes on the table for either of them for in just the once upon a time, the blue wall, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin. I was reading, and I don't remember who it was. I was reading earlier, somebody saying that if Biden wins one of those, he most likely can win. Trump needs to win all of them.
Again, the onus is on and the pressure's on Trump. He's still having to defend more, and as an incumbent, he's still defending more. I think again, the takeaway from tonight is, on one hand, you could say yes, it's a lot closer than a lot of people may have been anticipating, especially with the economy and with COVID and everything else. But then on the other hand, you could say it's pretty much where we've been as a country.
But aren't polls? Aren't we seeing that polls seem to have been wrong?
Yeah, I did want to get to that. Because when I was referencing some of the predictions for the landslides, and you saw a little bit of tightening, but at the same time, like even somewhere like Pennsylvania, you still had like 4, around, give or take. I don't remember what the averages were, but I don't know. Yeah, to Tamara's point, what do you think, Scott?
I could say yes, that, there were some sites that I went to and I was surprised by, the amount of what they expected to win, especially in places like Florida. They had Biden at like 75% chance to win. Again, that wasn't really a poll. It was just sort of the market of what they were showing. And leading up, you did see a lot of flip-flopping with Florida, 2 or 3 points. Some had Trump, some had Biden, but it seemed to be leaning Biden, as well as North Carolina. So, you could say that, the polls could be slightly off again, but I don't know at the end of the day if it's really going to be any different, that's going to be worse than 2016 or even as similar, because I think overall the polls are pretty close to what they anticipated. It's just very difficult, especially when you're taking certain places with high populations like Florida, for instance, even North Carolina, that to get an accurate number from some of these places can be a little bit tricky, because you really look at Florida and it was won for Trump, ostensibly that he's won it. I don't see how he couldn't, in Miami-Dade County, but everything else was pretty much like how it was before in 2016, and the race was very tight and there were some better numbers for Biden in some of those other counties. So I think, yes, there will be some polls that they'll have to go back and look and be like, okay, how did we miss maybe the Miami-Dade area for Florida, for instance? They might be looking at some of these other states like North Carolina and Georgia. But overall, these numbers are going to be really close. And if anything, it is still shaking out how we anticipate. And as we talked about before, Biden's still going to win the popular vote. So, it's very difficult when you're trying to weigh the popular vote and get it right with the Electoral College when these numbers are so close, like they were in 2016, where when you have a little bit of breathing room in 2008 and even 2012 on how it's going to shake out, but these numbers are so tight that it really doesn't take much to move things one way or the other. And that's why I always say it all comes down to turnout, and who's going to get the best turnout.
Yeah, and I mean, 4 years ago, what we ultimately saw, you saw, like 0.4. You saw like these razor thin margins that we've talked so much about in the years since. That I think that ultimately, however it shakes out, I think you're going to see a lot of that again. And I don't know. What do you think, Tamara? Do you think that the closeness says more about the country, or does it say more about the two candidates being, again, probably nobody's dream date is either one of these guys?
I think it.
Except
I think it
the
says
QAnon people.
Exactly. I think it says more about the country because I've been saying that even if Biden wins, and even if Biden had won by like a sweep, I still wouldn't feel necessarily that comfortable because Trump's numbers are still so high, and it's amazing that this person has the numbers that he does. This person who consistently lies, this person who has countless bankruptcies, just all evidence points to what a corrupt and terrible businessman. Oh, what happened to Scott?
No, he walked away, so I'll let him come back. Yeah.
What a terrible businessman Trump is, and it just shows how misinformed such a large portion of the country is, and not that that's just skewed Republican. I mean, there's a lot of misinformed Democrats too.
Sure, of course.
I would say though, the fact that Democrats carry the larger percentage of college grads and the science community and things like that. Like I do think that the Republican Party does have a larger portion of the misinformed. But I heard an interview with the president of a pro-Trump PAC, and he was also a former correspondent. He worked with the RNC, and he was saying that he was pretty sure that Biden was going to win tonight, and he said that the problem with Trump's campaign is that you need to change your campaign, and Trump is pretty much running the same campaign that he ran in 2016. And basically how the Republican Party needs to change and starts to appealing to, more diverse and lower income voters, which is true for the Republican Party moving forward. But it's just amazing that, the reason that Trump will probably win Florida is because, like we said, is because of the Cuban and Venezuelan population that, hear him say socialist. And that's all they need to hear, So this portion of America that doesn't really look at specifics or do their research or fact check anything, that is the problem that we need to address, because, who knows whoever the next insane candidate to run will be and how big their numbers will be too. Like the misinformation is just a monster that's I don't see it getting any better anytime soon, unless it's somehow until Gen Z starts to take Senate seats and congressional seats and more have more political sway. I don't see things changing that soon.
Yeah, and by the way, I think Gen Z will be ready for politics when they can vote on Tamara's favorite platform, of course, which is TikTok. When you can actually do your votes directly on TikTok. I don't know, it'll be something
Gen
new.
Gen Z is voting. I mean, they're the reason that so much of the. Not only is Gen Z voting, but there's the amount of activism in the younger generations. I mean, I feel like in my personal experience with teenagers is that they are so much more involved and They've got their finger on the pulse of politics in a way that I don't think my generation did.
Mhm.
I'm in the upper tier of the millennials. I'm an elder millennial, and
An elder millennial.
and even though millennials trend progressive, it's still just the difference between millennials and Gen Z, I feel like, is just night and day. So I think we're only going to get more progressive in the future, but I'm saying it's going to be at least 15 years.
Yeah, I would say even less than that. And also, I've been seeing a lot of, like you said, Gen Z, even Gen Z Republican voters are very socially liberal, which is exciting to see. They're for LGBT rights, they're for the environment, and so I think you will see a shift even within the Republicans and more conservative leaning voters as Gen Z starts to age up. But yeah, absolutely, I definitely feel hopeful. And as I was saying, just even the numbers in some of these Sunbelt states are very positive, even if they don't quite cross the finish line this time. I do feel really good about the way the next 4 years and the next decade are gonna pan out for Democrats and for progressives at large, and for, like you said, as you continue to see this shift happening. But yeah, it's definitely a lot tighter tonight at bottom line than I expected for both the Senate and the presidency. I thought that we'd see a lot more stronger numbers in both.
Of course, everyone was prepared for, and on this show and just conversationally, there was no one who was like, "Oh, look at these polls. This is great. All right, I can relax. I'm gonna take October off and not have to worry about it anymore." And CNN's giving President Trump Mississippi. That's not really a shock, but look, that he's just keeps that's 6 more electoral votes, so that now they've got him at 114, which maybe that was the one that 538 had. I wanted to we'll have time in the weeks ahead to talk about some of the issues, but 40 years ago, Ronald Reagan said that it's morning in America. I think we're seeing more and more that it's 420 in America, because Arizona and New Jersey have both passed statewide propositions to legalize marijuana. And I think that the interesting thing about that, to me, is that, look, the growing up in the age of the war on drugs, Nancy Reagan just say no. The idea was marijuana is a gateway drug. If you have marijuana in January, by December, you're probably going to be dead because of all the drugs you've gotten into since then. And I think a lot of people, as incrementally states have passed, California, we've had it here for a while. You don't even have to have a pretend doctor's note anymore,
Right.
So I think that this is a very specific issue that you're seeing, I think, a huge shift in the last 30 years. Even the last 20 years, but especially during going back to the Reagan and the George H.W. Bush administration, just the approach towards drugs, I think, has changed so much. And I don't know, Scott, what do you think? Do you think that that's part of a bigger picture, or is it really come down to something that weed is more of a bipartisan issue, because of the simple fact that even conservatives will concede the fact that, but you can tax the shit out of it and raise a lot of money, and not raise our taxes,
I think it's a little bit of both, actually. I think as we've seen over time, it's just that the taboo nature of pot has just gone by the wayside, and you see CBD in every kind of product imaginable now, and so that it's just been taken away of being like, ooh, it's this bad thing, and it should be. Let's be honest. I mean, it was part of that really badly thought out war on drugs that, again, disproportionately affected Black and brown people throughout time, and they had it on their records and everything else. So this is a good thing that this has sort of become something of the past. And again, that's why you need a Democratic president and a Democratic Senate to be able to finally take that off as a federal crime as well. And that's going to be the next step. As I've said all along, when it comes to things like marriage equality, when it comes to abortion rights, when it comes to drug legalization, it really needs to be an all or nothing. You really cannot have a patchwork with states. And so it needs to be taken up as a federal thing now to make it legal in all 50 states. And we're seeing that momentum happening now in both red and blue states. And it's much the same thing that goes back to healthcare and Obamacare. And we see the expansion of Medicaid winning handily in incredibly red states like Idaho recently, and all these, Oklahoma, all the red states also vote handily to increase Medicaid funds for things like Obamacare. So there are things that are bipartisan. What tends to happen is, for ratings and for everything else, different networks and different websites and everything try to really pigeonhole everyone into making it seem like there are a lot more differences. But, there really aren't when it comes to some of these basic things across the country. So it's a little bit of both. And like you said, for Republicans and for libertarians, it's like they don't want government interaction, and they want to be able to do what they want to do and not have the government tell them. And then it's a win-win for everybody because they can tax the crap out of it and make some much needed money for local governments. So definitely is, yeah.
Well, not being called outright, but you are seeing, this is a CNN correspondent, Manu Raju right there. He's saying with 74% of the vote in, Mark Kelly is up 55-45 over McSally. Biden, it's almost an identical margin, 54-45. You're seeing, I think, some outlets on the verge of calling Arizona for Biden, but well, I don't know. I mean, they don't want to have to take back their projection, but they also, I mean, they would love us to be watching until 2 a.m, because I mean, I remember that in the 2000 election, I tried to go to sleep and I just ended up turning the TV back on because I was like, what am I going to do? Really? Like
some places are calling Arizona for
okay.
Biden.
Yeah,
So,
well, I think that, I mean, with 75% and a 10 percentage point difference, I mean, that seems like it would be in that line. Obviously, there's a lot more for us to talk about. And as much as I wish we could stay on for 13 hours, I think, wait, what are you laughing at, Scott? That's a great idea. We'll probably wrap things up at 8:30 Pacific, and then we'll be back sometime soon. I would say the best bet is to follow me on Twitter at ChristianDMZ, and then Tamara and Scott as well, SMan80 and HeyTamara_. Those are our Twitters. I know the TikToks are jammed now, but that's the place where we'll tweet it out when we are going to come back. But
TikToks are jammed. The circuits are crossed.
That's right.
You can't get on the TikToks.
I can't. Well, look, Storage Yard Resident has followed you on TikTok, and he has kind of shamed me now because I'm like, if Storage Yard Resident, who was a guest on the show once upon a time, if he can get on TikTok, what is actually stopping me? And I'll tell you what it is.
Do you know who my favorite? Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, fear of change. What were you going to say?
My favorite person on TikTok right now is Mandy Patinkin. He is.
Oh, I heard about him.
Oh my God.
I heard his stuff is great.
He's so.
I've seen some of that. Yeah.
Entertaining. He and his wife are super political, and they'll just do these like a dance and then reveal a Biden shirt, and then or their son does this thing where he asks them like, "What does GIF stand for?" And they'll be like, "GIF." Okay, let's see. It means get in face, get in, and they'll like try to, he'll tell them like, what does LMFAO mean, or, things like that. But he's the best. So what I'm saying is like, there's, even though the demographic of TikTok is obviously very young and very, very young, for a long time, my followers were like 9 years old. It's creepy when children are like commenting on your stuff. But no,
yeah, I mean, you usually test well with the cuties crowd, so I guess that makes sense. So,
that's
but no,
why I was asking you who Blippi is.
I forgot you did ask me who Blippi was, and boy, my kids know who Blippi is. Yeah, it's that was the thing early with TikTok, was that you were just like, well, they're just too young. But yeah. Now, as we were talking earlier, I think we knew this, that Tommy Tuberville had defeated Doug Jones. We had talked about that. I think maybe it was likely, and I think in Georgia they're going to have the runoff, right? Because somebody has to get 50%. Isn't that how that one works, Scott?
That is correct. It's a jungle primary, so absolutely yes.
Yeah.
So I think both of those are going to end up going to runoffs. I mean, David Perdue has led over 50%, but again, we haven't gotten the big numbers yet from the Atlanta metro area yet, so those numbers could dip below 50, and there'll still be some mail-in ballots to be counted. So there's a good possibility that both will go into runoffs, which can be difficult for Democrats at that point, because Democrats tend to come out on high, big elections like the presidential race. So to be able to turn out the Democrats will be a challenge to make sure that those stay in, and especially right now with the Senate basically split. It's tied right now. Some places are already calling Mark Kelly as the apparent winner in Arizona as well, as Biden winning there. And again, it's not a huge surprise, like we said earlier, just this evening, Arizona is
what we're seeing with Iowa is incredibly close. CNN has with 60% of the vote. Teresa Greenfield is only 599 votes up on Joni Ernst. So very easy for that to change, so
absolutely
nobody calling that. And Steve Bullock in Montana is 12,000 up. So yeah, I think that, so what they have right now that they're comfortable calling, it's 42-42, and still a lot more votes to be counted. As we wind down here, what do you need to see tonight before you try to sleep, Tamara? And I don't even know where you stand in these things, but are you gonna take you're gonna need to take an Ambien or something comparable to that to actually get some sleep, or?
No, I have a terrible time sleeping anyway, so who knows, but I would like to see the smaller, because like in Wisconsin and Michigan, even though Michigan's only 16 or these are
60
basically at half.
So yeah,
percentage in, but I just it's too wide of a. Donald Trump's got too much of a lead in all of these Rust Belt states.
Yeah, look, I mean, he's leading with more than half of the votes counted, but
MSNBC just called Arizona as well for
it's
Biden.
Going to come down to a lot of those. Now we're back. You said MSNBC called Arizona for Biden in the moment that we were gone. And our friend Jacob Downey has been contributing jokes. Anxiety, anyone? Yeah, I think that people are feeling that. Look, I think if you feel very strongly, like our friend Storage Yard Resident does, that President Trump is the right way forward for the next 4 years in this country, you can feel better than maybe you did yesterday, but you probably don't feel great in the way that, the idea that, yes, there was this shy Trump voter that would turn out, but they weren't quite as shy. There haven't been so far. I mean, the fact that you can almost call Florida, but you can't yet, and some of those other places that you still, it's almost midnight on the East Coast and you haven't called Georgia yet. So I think that the turnout is still very close the way it was. Percentage wise, obviously the overall turnout is good. And, on CNN, John King kept saying the same thing. Whoever you want to vote, the big takeaway of tonight is there's so much more turnout, but I think that ultimately we're going to look at that turnout and then maybe it's like, all right, it's going to be kind of still split very similarly to 2016. I think you're going to see a couple places that are different, but President Trump loses a few of the states that he won last time. He had 306 electoral votes, so if he loses really a few of those ones that we're talking about, if he were to lose Pennsylvania and Ohio, and right now I think he's up in both of them, and the Arizona, I mean, that's enough right there. Interestingly enough, that those 3 states, that would mean that Joe Biden would be president. So not going to happen tonight. President Trump, according to Kellyanne Conway, I believe she was on ABC earlier, she said President Trump will address the nation tonight. There's 29 minutes left on the East Coast for it to still be Tuesday night. He did cancel an interview with Hugh Hewitt, the conservative radio show host. He was supposed to be on with him earlier tonight, and they did cancel it. So I think that doesn't mean that they think they're not going to win. It just means that their internals were saying it's going to be close, but it's going to be a while, So on that note, we will be back sometime soon, before the end of the reason. We'll still be back before the end of the week. We have to sidebar and figure out when that makes sense to do. But we want to do it at a time where we feel like people tune in. We want to do it at a time where the 3 of us are available, and any of our friends who might be able to join us, that would be great too. So I think we're oh yeah, Scott, the same question I asked Tamara. At what point are you going to go to bed tonight?
I don't know yet.
40?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it'll be interesting because I mean, yeah, I'd like to see maybe Nevada called, for Biden, and then we'll see. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
How did Nevada go in 2016?
To Hillary Clinton. It's been Democratic since 2008.
Oh, okay.
So it's shifted over quite a bit. So yeah, I would like to see Virginia once we get those numbers in. I think again, like Roy Cooper won as the Democratic governor of North Carolina. So again, that is a positive to maybe pull out some of those Democratic voters for Cunningham in the Senate and for Biden. So North Carolina, I think, is going to be very, very close. And what's not as close now is Arizona. I mean, over 200,000 votes now that Biden's ahead by. So it's going to be interesting. So Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, we will not know tonight. It's just by the time they start counting everything, we probably may not even know by Friday in places like Pennsylvania. But if Biden can pick up some of these other states, then it may not matter as much. But it's definitely going to be a lot closer than I think anyone may have realized as of this morning. So,
Scott, do you think we're not going to know who's president until Friday? Maybe.
I don't know. It depends on how Iowa and Ohio kind of shake out, and then how Georgia and North Carolina do, because it'll be very close. But depending on how those states go, we may know before. But I think it's going to be close enough now that you can see possible litigation and trying to throw out votes in places like Pennsylvania, and that's that could be what we did not want to happen could now actually be a more real possibility.
Now, how come you're not calling Virginia? Like the AP is calling Virginia for Biden, even though percentage-wise Trump is still leading, but so many.
I'm comfortable calling that. I was just saying earlier, it was only because that they were counting today's voting, and that's why the numbers are skewing higher. But yes, I do feel pretty comfortable that it's going to be blue when it's all
gotcha.
said.
And what state is it that counts? You were saying they count the mail-in last.
So I'll paint it blue now.
Yeah, what states were you saying? There's some that do their day of vote and then the mail in. So sorry, which one was that, Scott?
Virginia does. Virginia is one that does. Yeah.
Okay. So that might be what. And look, Fox still has Virginia for Biden. CNN does not, but that's, I don't know. There's a level of this being terrifying, but it's always fascinating. And I think that it'll certainly be interesting to keep watching. But I'll be honest, I was hoping that I could go to bed by 11 o'clock tonight. That would have been great. But I will tell you right now, I will still be up. So if you're still watching the returns and any of you want to tweet at me at Christian DMZ, you can do that. Tamara, where do people keep in touch with you?
Find me on TikTok, like Storage Yard Resident did at Hey Tamra.
And Scott, it's right there on the screen. Where can people find you?
At SBan80 on Twitter.
Although I
And,
suspect he'll unfollow me due to
Some of the content.
some of the content.
Well, look, I appreciate I appreciate anybody who watches the show or listens to it, but I appreciate the open-mindedness of our friend Storage Yard Resident that has stayed with us for more than 4 years.
Absolutely, more than 4 years. Yes.
Yeah. So it's crazy, and I appreciate everybody who joined us. And if you're watching the archive version, you're probably if you're watching the archive version of this, you know more than we do at this moment.
Yeah,
so
you'll be in the future.
Go ahead and troll us in the comments, please. Say whatever you want. You know better than we do. That's the best that we can do, though. Anyway, I fortunately I have the distraction of trying to put my kids to bed. We'll see how long that takes. But we will be back soon, like I said, at Christian DMZ. That'll be the best place at Trump Report ABTV. We'll send out a link for when our next show is sometime between now and Friday. We'll let you know. We'll try and announce it at least a few hours beforehand. All right. Thanks to Tamara and Scott, and of course, everybody in the chat. We will see you soon, just not now.